I finally decided what I was going to be making with my new steam canner. I decided my first recipe was going to be relish. I decided to cut the recipe in half for a couple of reasons. First of all, the complete recipe is calling for 12 bottles of 12 half-pint bottles of relish. So that's a little bit much for me that only eats it, although I could give some away. But anyway, so I just want to do half of the recipe. And another reason why as well is because I've never had it, so maybe I won't care for it, but I can't see that I won't because all the ingredients seem really great. Another reason as well that I decided to cut the recipe in half is because at this time of the year, there's not really any fresh produce out there, so everything was store-bought. So I just wanted to do a half a recipe, but if I really like it, then this summer when I can get everything really fresh, I'm going to probably do the entire recipe and maybe give a little bit more away as well. And don't forget, if you like the content of this channel, don't be shy. Hit that subscribe button that you see in the bottom of your screen. That way you'll be notified when I post new videos on different projects that I've got going on. Before you use it for the first time, you should run a test, and that's what it says in the instruction manual. So basically the test consists of putting 4 quart-sized jars in there filled with water, bringing it to a boil, and then checking to see if your gauge is in the green section when your pot seems to be kind of boiling hard and water's kind of coming out all around. And so I did that test last night just to make sure, and being the extra cautious person that I am when it comes to food preservation, there's a little vent hole in the back, and I even stuck a thermometer in there to check what the temperature was actually inside the steam canner, and it was exactly at 212 degrees when I put the temperature probe in there. So I was quite excited to see that it is actually bringing the temperature where it needs to be able to safely preserve your jars. The first thing that needs to happen to get this relish going, we need to chop up all these vegetables. All my vegetables have been chopped up, and so just to give you an idea what this means is I cut the recipe in half. Here in my measuring cup, I have 4 cups of finely diced cucumber, 2 cups of red pepper, 2 cups of green pepper, 1 cup of celery, and half a cup of onion. So the next step that you need to do here is you need to take salt. Now, once again, we're canning, so you can't use your table salt. You have to use either your pickling salt, your sea salt, your coarse salt, no table salt. So you're going to take 1/4 cup of your salt, and you're going to add that to your vegetables, and you're going to stir that well. Now, I've already done that. What needs to happen is that you need to stir that well into your vegetables, and you need to leave it sitting for 4 hours. Just cover it and leave it sitting for 4 hours. Now don't worry, don't panic because of all the salt, because then you're going to drain it and rinse it. So that's what the next step that needs to happen is to let it sit for 4 hours. So go read a book, go have a coffee while you're waiting that 4 hours. Once the 4 hours are up, we need to rinse out the salt. So what you do is you're going to place the vegetables in a colander in the sink. You just rinse it with cool water and then squeeze it, press down on it to get out all the excess liquid, and then you're going to set it aside for a bit just to drip. Then squeeze out the excess liquids. I'm going to let it sit for a little bit and then come back as well and squeeze again just to make sure. Once we've drained all our vegetables, what we need to do next is to make the vinegar solution. So you start off by adding 1.5 cups, and remember I've cut everything in half. So 1.5 cups of vinegar that I've already put inside my pot here, and I've already added my vegetables as well. You also put 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons, because it was initially 2.25. So to cut that in half was 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of sugar. 1.5 tablespoons of celery seeds and 1.5 tablespoons of mustard seeds. Now it's really important to never cut your acids, your sugars and your vinegars. You can't cut the quantities. You can't say, well, I'm going to make a low sugar relish because I want to cut down on my sugar intake. it's really important for the safety of what you're making, of what you're putting in your jars, to respect the quantities that are inside of the recipe. It's all about safety. What we need to do is we need to bring this over to a simmer over about a medium-high heat, and it has to simmer for about 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do at the same time is I've got my caps back here, so I'm just going to put those to warm a little bit. We don't want them boiling, but we do want them warm. And I am going to start my steam canner as well. So just to give you an idea, for the water level, you need to put water in your steam canner to the height of the rack. So that's the only amount of water that you need to put inside your steam canner. When I did this last night, it came to a boil very fast. There's a hole in the back of your vent, in the back of your cover here. You put that towards the back so you can easily read your dial on top to know when you can start timing. It is recommended to preheat the steamer before you put your jars in. You don't need to bring it up to full boil to 212 degrees, but to start it boiling and starting to heat up. And it will make your process go a whole lot faster. The relish has been simmering for 10 minutes, so we're going to turn that off, and we're going to bring everything over to the other side of the kitchen so we can start bottling it. Just to let you know, it took maybe half the time, maybe 5 minutes, for the steam canner to get to start boiling. And I don't know if you can see it, but I've got some steam coming out from the back, and the cover is kind of gently lifting from the pressure of the steam. So I have lowered it down, but when I look at the gauge, it is already actually where it needs to be. I could start timing if my jars were in there. But so it really didn't take a lot of time at all. 5 to 7 minutes max to warm up where it needed to be. So let's get these in the bottle. We're going to put the relish in the jars. Just one thing I didn't say, maybe to specify about what kind of cucumbers that I use. So you can use either kind of cucumbers, either the ones with the large seeds inside, the garden variety, or English cucumbers, and you have to peel them. But if you do use the garden variety with the large seeds, probably it would be best to remove the seeds. I use the English cucumbers, and so I didn't have to seed them, but you do have to peel. So let's get this in the jars. It smells pretty good. So we add this to the jar. As usual, we need to leave headspace, so we're going to be leaving about a ½ inch of headspace. The headspace is to ensure that it can create the proper seal and that it's not overfilled so that our bottles break. Always, even if it's liquid, it's always a good idea to run a plastic utensil, instrument, something through the jars just to make sure that you've gotten all the air bubbles removed. It's not recommended to use anything metal because it could damage the jar or create little glass chips inside. As always, wipe the rims of your jar to make sure that you have nothing on the rims of your jar that would prevent your jars from sealing. I have my caps here that are warm. Center that on top of your jar. And your ring, if you can get it on, just fingertip tight, and that's it. And you continue to do this until you've got all your relish inside of your jars. And I'm going to transfer these 2 jars into my steamer. This is what the top of the steam canner looks like. As you can see, it's divided into 3 zones, zone 1, 2, and 3, and each zone represents the altitude that you live in. So I am in zone 1. So as you can see, the gauge is getting pretty close. I have to be in the dark green section before I can start timing, and it barely took a couple minutes to get to this spot. Even before I had all my jars into my canner, it was getting close already to the dark green. Once the red gauge gets into the dark green, that's when I start timing, and this needs to be processed for 10 minutes. You almost treat your steam canner like a pressure canner. Once you get into the dark green section, or when you get into the green section based on your altitude, then you can slowly lower the temperature of your stove top, always ensuring to stay into that green area. You don't want it to go lower than that. If it goes lower than that, you would have to start timing again. Now that it's gotten into the green section, I'm going to start timing this for 10 minutes. 10 minutes are up. So we're going to turn the stove off, but we still have to leave it sitting for another 5 minutes. We can't take the cover off because it can affect the processing, so we turn it off and leave it for another 5 minutes. 5 minutes are up. We're going to remove the cover. I ended up with 5 jars and maybe half of another one, which I'll just put in the fridge right away. As usual, you want to remove your jars without tipping them on the side, but there's actually no water on top of these because they were done with the steam canner, so there's no water on top. You're going to put them in a spot where they can stay untouched for 24 hours. And they're already sealing, as you can hear, so I think my first attempt with the steam canner was a success. So we'll leave them here for 24 hours and we'll check back to see how everything went. There you have it. I'm proud to say my first successful batch of preserves in my new steam canner. So my 5 perfectly sealed bottles of Relish. Once again, if you enjoyed the content, if you like what you see, be sure to hit that subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. That way you'll know when I have new content. As usual, once you're done, make sure to remove the rings from your jars. Don't store them in your cabinets or in your pantry with the rings on. It can create a false seal. Once you've had that done, make sure to write on top of your jars what's your product and when it was processed. And then you can store these in your pantry, in your cabinet, in a cool, dry, dark environment. And these can last for at least a year. Check back again soon to see what other projects I'll have going on.